Okay, once again, we are back with Taylor Bradford of the Gloucester Daily Times to talk about all things happening in Gloucester this week and what she's been covering. But first off, you want to talk about the recent election.
Yeah, so this week was pretty big here in the city as state primaries, the last elections before November, where we look to national elections for the president-elect. So while this year's elections were void of bake sales due to COVID-19 precautions, Gloucester actually saw an uptick in voter turnout this year. Now, whether they were mail-in or in person varied, and the final numbers will come out on the government website on Friday, the official results. But the preliminary results showed that out of the 21,705 registered voters, 8,497, that's 39% cast ballots on Tuesday, which is rather high. If you look at 2018 state primaries, about 18% of voter turnout. And so it was actually a pretty big turnout for this time. City Clerk Joanne Sino said that she was expecting a slower turnout, but because people did have the option of kind of turning in their own ballots, she was kind of assured that there might be a little bit more of a turnout because people don't have to, physically go to a brick and mortar polling station. So it'll be interesting to see how this changes and what this might look like come November. But for the state primaries, Markey won out against Kennedy. We saw that it was kind of back and forth throughout the entire evening, but Markey did pull up and had the Gloucester vote. And then we saw a couple others. Seth Moulton won with 81%. And then also looking at, we have Eileen Duff is going to be the Governor of Council's incumbent, and also looking at Pamela Casey O'Brien of Saugus also received 99% of votes cast for County Register of Probates. Both of them were unopposed. And so more of those details and more of the election results are up on our website, but also on the government's website. So interested to see what it looks like for November. Going to be really interesting. People are eager to get out and vote. Think they said other than lots of hand sanitizing, lots of mask wearing, things didn't seem as nervous as people were expecting. So that's what we've got on elections for this week.
Very cool. And speaking of mask wearing, you spoke with some teens who have their own little initiative going?
I did. So I was able to speak with a couple young women over in downtown yesterday, and we're all wearing masks, and I have to say theirs were much more fashionable than mine were. They were quite excited to share about their initiative that they started. They had noticed that there was a lot of people within the city who weren't wearing their masks, and they really wanted to work with the city to kind of encourage people to wear their masks, and saying how this is a great way to not only kind of show off what your mask might look like and how they can match your outfits, kind of speak to your personality, but also save lives. And so they made these really colorful posters. It's all youth run, and they designed the posters. They worked with somebody to kind of get them onto the online platform, and they're hanging up all throughout the city and throughout the school halls when schools open. And actually there's going to be a big banner over at St. Peter's Square with these posters, and the tagline for this campaign is called "Just Wear It, Masks Are for Everyone," and they have them in a couple different languages to kind of be inclusive to everyone in the community. And they're quite excited, and it's going to be cool to see how that launches and how that might impact. I spoke with a few business owners who have them up in their store. Adam Farber of Mark Adrian Shoes was very excited. He said initiatives like this are the things that could keep his business open, especially as we kind of look and see of the unknowns of this fall.
Very nice. Speaking of innovation, let's talk woodworking.
Yeah, so if you go down by the water, you're going to notice that there's a small little kind of hole in the wall garage, and in that garage is Adam and Katie Quinn, and they're a couple who Adam is born and bred in Gloucester. They had lived overseas for a time while they worked with a surfing company, and now they have come back to Gloucester to work and provide and volunteer their time for the youth. So they're doing a youth mentorship woodworking program over at their nonprofit called the Cornerstone Collective. Cornerstone Collective Creative, excuse me. And so their opportunity is to provide opportunities for kids and to practice their woodworking skills, to kind of learn, but that's not their main goal. While, they'll have a hammer in hand and they'll be working with boards and surfboards and skateboards, their priority is really working with students in the area as a mentorship to kind of help them kind of process through life and walk together and learn different traits as they're doing it. And Adam was kind of speaking to the final result, the final project that they have of this couple month long program is actually being able to go out into the community, ask a company, organization, or business what they might need, and say, these are the skills and tools that I have learned in this mentorship program. What do you need and how can I help you? So it's a really creative initiative on getting these students back out into the community and kind of getting them connected. So again, that's called the Cornerstone Creative, and it's the couple and they're looking for volunteers to help walk alongside these students. But also a little tidbit that's quite interesting is they have a surfboard shaping station over at their woodworking site. So if you're a surfer looking to get a surfboard shaped, they will walk alongside you in the process. They won't necessarily do it just for you. They'll say, come along with us, and they'll teach you how to do it. So that's a little sneak preview that they've shown me and that they're excited to share with the community.
And the Cornerstone Creative is all over social media too, and they are down on Beach Court, right on the way to Pavilion Beach if you guys want to check them out. Awesome stuff again, Taylor. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
We are with Erika Brown. She's the editor and publisher of the Manchester Cricket to tell us about all things Manchester and Essex. But the big news this week, Erika, is the latest school committee meeting.
Yeah, we had a marathon school committee meeting this Tuesday. And it went for more than 3.5 hours, but apparently compared to Gloucester, that's not a marathon.
It's a nap.
But the big thing there is back to school, like everybody's talking about. Manchester and Essex, as you probably remember, is only remote. We went early with a remote-only program. They decided that in mid-August. And they actually made a last-minute turn to do that. It was, they were heading towards a hybrid model, and then in the 11th hour, they made it remote-only. It really upset a lot of people, or it caught them off guard. But I think it was really well planned. They really stuck to the fact that inconsistency was probably the worst thing for kids. And they said, if you wanted to create a recipe for inconsistency, it's a hybrid model. So they said, there are no good choices. We're going all remote. And at least for that, we can have sort of this very steady, same thing. And then we'll look for metrics on what will trigger a back to school. When can we get greenlit for the march towards remote, from remote to hybrid to a normalized school program again? Yeah.
So what are, but you said that there's pushback, and I understand there's the athletic program is almost under a whole separate umbrella, right? The way it's being mandated.
Well, it's not mandates, it's suggestions. It's it's statewide suggestions. So the governor's office is sort of talking to the state school programs and saying, oh, this is what we'd like, right, for the actual academic year. Although let's notice this. The government is making recommendations for in school, regular school, but he's not paying for it. So.
Right.
Isn't that called an unfunded mandate? Anyway, but for sports, it is the MIAA, which is Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. I believe that's what it is. They came out with recommendations. They really strongly recommended re-engaging with sports. And the parents here in Manchester and Essex submitted, Phil First, who is a Manchester resident, submitted a letter to the committee, the school committee this week in the marathon session. Signed by 181 parents, basically spelling out in a very formal way the health benefits, mental health benefits, physical benefits of engaging in sports, and really push the school committee to go along with the MIAA recommendations. But that hasn't been done. It's going to be done. They're going to engage that in the next meeting in 2 weeks. My sense is they'll probably do it. Although it was really interesting, in the meeting, somebody brought up, and this had to do with the cricket, I was on the call the entire time, but I left once. And during the one time I left for like 3 minutes, they mentioned the Manchester Cricket. 2 weeks ago, we had the Twilight League semifinals on our front page, and it was a high five from the star of the game, who was wearing his glove, his baseball glove, and he was getting high five this way by his fellow teammates. So it was safe, but they didn't have masks on, but they had just been playing their game, and it was just the team members. Now, the Twilight League is an adult league, and that game happened before the government's mandate, the new mandates for groups, right? Well, in that meeting on Tuesday, somebody brought it up and they said, well, look at that picture in the Manchester cricket. It has students in a scrimmage playing illegally. I thought, no, that's not what it is.
It doesn't take much.
The guy getting high-fived, I think, is 32 years old.
Wearing a glove, yeah.
And he's wearing a glove. But in any case, that's what's happening.
So you were mentioning before we talked that you're seeing a lot of interesting innovations happening at the Manchester school system to manage this remote learning and the whole culture there.
Well, what I saw was a lot of preparedness. You see evidence on the Zoom calls now with teachers and administrators. The way they engage on Zoom, they're very animated. They use the camera. You can tell that they've been trained to engage their students. And it's really sort of interesting. The other thing they've done, which I thought was really innovative, is starting next week, they're going to have outdoor orientation days for all the students from elementary school all the way up to high school. And they're all at different times, and students can come with their parents, except with high school, there are no parents. But you can come, you can meet your fellow students, your maybe future playmates. You can meet your teachers, your guidance counselors as well. It just is a good way to sort of start off the year. And I think that that's gonna bode well for them. One thing I should mention is the other thing that they're avoiding in Manchester and Essex is the lack of staff for teachers for hybrid learning. When you have remote, you have a fortified teacher, base. And everyone in Manchester and Essex, all the teachers, they seem to be really engaged with the school year and the new challenges. But I heard on Tuesday night from Pam Bodwin, the superintendent of schools, there is a regional shortage of 20% among teachers because teachers are not going back because of health reasons. They're compromised from age or from health status, and they're not going to be able to go back to a hybrid year. And what that leaves them with is a real problem in other districts for replacements for substitute teachers because they don't pay a lot, and it's kind of dicey to go into a situation you're not familiar with. And they're finding that a lot of people, surprise, surprise, are not jumping at the chance to be a substitute teacher. So that's a challenge that I think a lot of these districts are going to face.
Interesting stuff. Well, great stuff as always, Erika. We'll be back with you again next week with more news from the award-winning Manchester Cricket.
That's right. We won 5 awards for the National Newspaper Association. It came at a good time, for us. We needed to see some good news from us, but it was a lot of hard work in 2019, and we got the credit that it was nice to get it. So thank you.
5 awards. That's not a small achievement. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we'll keep going.
And we think that paper is worth 10 awards. We think you guys are shining. Yeah.
Oh, for the letters to the editor alone.
That's what I was going to say. Letters to the editor. I mean, that deserves a Pulitzer, that page.
Yeah. I tell you, a lot of action.
All right, we'll see you next week, Erika. Thanks again.
Bye, guys.
Bye. All right, folks, we are back with John Penaloza. He's the admin for Rockport Stuff. Each week, we check in with John to see what is going on in that little corner of Cape Ann. How you doing, bud?
Good, man. How are you guys?
Great.
We're good.
All right, give us the skinny.
All right, so the skinny is, we're post-election here. It was very interesting, I'm sure, for everybody. I was able to vote remotely in Rockport and had a good time with it, like early vote, so that was fine. But it's interesting that since it was, a primary in Massachusetts and we're leading up to the big one now in November, it feels like a lot of other political issues are taking front and center. Like in Rockport, for instance, there's been an ongoing conversation. It's really actually kind of fascinating to follow about Black Lives Matter and the whole, racial justice movement and people's sort of evolving understanding of what this is, right? Because if you go into Rockport Stuff, you see that Rockport has a lot of progressives or a lot of maybe left wing or whatever you want to call them, right? And it's like we educate each other. I count myself as one of those, right? It's like we educate each other via the conversation that we're having on Rockport Stuff about people's understanding of what it means to have white privilege, what it means to be an ally, what it means, like like the positions you're talking from that would have been common, 30, 40 years ago, and then all of a sudden putting a light on them and saying, holy crap, this is part of a huge systemic problem across the country, right? So there's an outspoken young man, Aiden, who's a big supporter of Black Lives Matter, and I've actually stood out with him on the 5 corners and held up BLM signs, and that movement, I think in Gloucester as well, but in Rockport has really taken hold in terms of the allies and people organizing things around it. And then we simultaneously see the pushback on national media, right? Because depending on what news sources you follow, BLM is adjacent to Antifa, and they're responsible for all the lawlessness and all the violence in the country right now, right? And that's like one of these giant social issues that's being pitted, one against the other, or trying to divide people down the middle, and used as a technique to win this election. But it has so much more nuance, and that conversation is actually coming out in Rockport Stuff.
Nice. I saw on Rockport Stuff that Aidan McCarthy was actually collecting data in the middle of his 5 corners
Yes.
not a protest. It was more of a, standing in solidarity.
Yeah, standout, right.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And he anecdotally reviewed some numbers from a couple of weeks. And then one week, he was like just counting up the people who would have a negative reaction, right? Because you get hundreds of people coming by in an hour if you're standing out, right? And a lot of people, I'd say offhand when I was there, it was like 30% wouldn't say anything, and then it was like 60% or more of like honks and high fives and thumbs up out the window, and everybody, and then there's a few people who would shout stuff like all lives matter, or whatever, like these buzzwords for they're against it, or I don't know, they watch Fox News a lot, which is not to isolate those people, but that there's a definite editorial line there, and there's a position, and Aidan was revealing some of those numbers, and also he found like overwhelming support for it, which is interesting to me because it's a big evolution from what it's been only in the last 5 or 6 years, and it really seems like a societal turning point right now, just in the last few months and weeks, and it's reflected on the very local level, right in the main intersection in Rockport.
Yeah, how many honks you get? I mean, I think that's just as basic as democracy gets, right?
Yeah,
except
exactly.
He did claim that, well, he didn't claim, but he perfected his data by saying we account for people who may have driven by twice. Like they may have gone to downtown, come through, and come through again. So he said it might be slightly inaccurate, but I think it was 85% positivity rate on that one day.
Yeah, I would say that. And I've been at the stand-up maybe 2 or 3 times now ever since these kind of things started happening. And I would say 85% is like the floor. I'd say it's probably closer to 90%.
And is this happening weekly, John, or whenever Aidan has time for it?
Yeah, I think they have established a time that they typically do it, which is like 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings, most Sunday mornings. And a lot of times, it's Aidan and a couple of friends, and sometimes it's been as big as I think 10 or 12 or 15 people. So yeah, it's becoming kind of a regular fixture.
Very cool. Well, you're becoming a regular fixture, so let's check in with you next week, and we'll see how many people honk or give you the middle finger in the meantime.
Oh, sounds good. Oh, if I ever had, forget about it.
Yeah.
Good, you did.
All right, thanks, John.
All right, see ya.